Welcome to Sleep History Archives channel. Throughout history, kings and queens ruled empires, shaped destinies, and carried the weight of nations on their shoulders. But when the sun set and silence filled their palaces, even the most powerful rulers had to surrender to sleep. Some found rest in the strangest of ways, on cold wooden beds, under flickering candlelight, or surrounded by watchful servants. Others believed their sleep connected them to the divine, or gave them strength for conquest. If you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to subscribe and gently tap the bell icon so you'll never miss another journey into the mysteries of sleep and history. Tonight, as you close your eyes and let your body grow heavy, I invite you to drift with me through time, to explore the strange sleep habits of history's rulers. So take a deep breath, let your mind settle, and now let us begin. In the land of ancient Egypt, where golden sands stretch endlessly and the eternal Nile flows like a silver ribbon through the desert, the pharaohs ruled as gods among men. But even gods must close their eyes and surrender to sleep. For the pharaoh, sleep was not a simple rest. It was a ritual, a ceremony of body and spirit, a sacred passage between this world and the next. Before lying down, the pharaoh's attendants would prepare the chamber. Torches and oil lamps were lit, their flames dancing against walls painted with sacred hieroglyphs, symbols of protection, prayers of strength, guardians carved in stone, watching over the night. The air was thick with fragrance as priests burned resins of myrrh, frankincense, and cedar. A warm, sweet smoke curled upwards, wrapping the room in a blanket of scent, purifying, sanctifying, soothing. The pharaoh himself was bathed in cool water from the Nile, water believed to hold the power of the gods, each drop washing away the burdens of the day, each touch cleansing not just the skin, but the soul. Then oils were smoothed across his body, golden drops of frankincense, lotus, and almond. The touch was gentle, almost reverent, as if preparing him not just for rest, but for a journey into eternity. His bed was no bed of luxury. It was carved of wood, or even stone, firm, unyielding, pure. No softness to distract, no cushions to weaken the spirit. And beneath his head, not a pillow, but a headrest, carved from alabaster or ivory. It lifted the head, aligning body and soul, so the spirit might rise freely in the night. For the pharaoh, the act of sleep was not weakness, it was communion. In dreams, the gods spoke. In visions, the future was revealed. Priests stood watch in silence, the glow of oil lamps flickering across walls of gold, the scent of incense, sweet and bitter, the air warm and dry, and the pharaoh lying in silence, his breath slowing, his eyes drifting closed. With each breath, he traveled further, not just into rest, but into visions, not just into dreams, but into the realm of the gods. In this sacred sleep, the pharaoh was no longer a man, but a soul wandering among stars, receiving wisdom, guidance, and prophecy. And when morning came, when the first rays of sun broke across the horizon, the pharaoh would awaken, not simply refreshed, but renewed, reborn, as if he had spoken with eternity itself. For the pharaohs of Egypt, sleep was not the end of the day. It was the beginning of a greater journey. A journey through silence, through dreams, through the voice of the gods. And as you imagine their ritual tonight, you too can let go, allowing sleep to carry you into your own sacred journey, where peace awaits beyond the veil of night. In the age of conquest, there lived a man whose name still echoes across the world, Alexander the Great. He was a ruler, a warrior, a dreamer of empires, but his sleep was unlike that of any ordinary man. For Alexander, sleep was not a place of comfort. It was a weapon, a discipline, a way to sharpen his spirit. History tells us that Alexander slept very little, only a few hours each night, sometimes less. He believed that too much sleep was a thief of time, and time was the battlefield he could never lose. Often he would lie on a simple mat, or even the bare earth. No golden bed, no silken sheets, only the ground beneath him, the stars above him, and his sword, always within reach. Imagine him now, in a silent army camp, fires burning low in the distance, soldiers whispering, drifting into slumber. And there, at the center, Alexander lies awake, his eyes heavy, yet his mind restless. Beside him, his sword glimmers faintly in the firelight. He never let it stray far, for even in sleep he wished to be ready, to rise, to fight, to lead. Some say he trained himself to wake at the slightest sound. The crack of a twig, the shift of footsteps, could stir him instantly from slumber. His rest was shallow, but sharp. His body weary, but his will unbroken. Yet, there were moments, rare and fleeting, when Alexander allowed himself to drift deeper. When the battles paused, when the stars hung silent, he would lie beneath the vast night sky and gaze upward into the endless dark. Perhaps in those brief hours, his dreams were not of conquest, but of the infinite, of lands unseen, of horizons yet to come. In his dreams, he may have walked through ancient temples or stood upon golden shores, speaking with gods or shadows of the future. But always, he returned, rising before dawn, his eyes burning with purpose, his army ready, his destiny calling. For Alexander, sleep was never surrender. It was fuel. It was strategy. It was the pause between battles, the silence before the storm. And as the world remembers his conquests, few recall the lonely figure of the young king, lying on bare ground, eyes closed at last, dreaming not of rest, but of empire. In the heart of England, beneath the heavy shadows of candlelight, there ruled a woman unlike any before her, Queen Elizabeth I. They called her the Virgin Queen, a ruler of fire and wit, who carried the weight of a kingdom upon her shoulders. And when night descended upon the royal palace, her chambers came alive with ritual. For Elizabeth, sleep was both sanctuary and struggle. It was the one time she could not rule, the one realm she could not control. Her nights were long, The affairs of state, the endless whispers of court, the fragile balance of power, all haunted her thoughts. And so, she crafted her own way to rest, a ritual of scents, of music, and quiet devotion. Before sleep, attendants would enter her chamber, carrying silver trays of dried lavender, rose petals, and mint. They scattered the herbs across the floor, so that every step she took released a breath of fragrance into the air. The queen would sit before her mirror, her reflection bathed in golden candlelight. Servants brushed her hair, 100 strokes, each movement slow, rhythmic, almost meditative. She believed that beauty was not just vanity, but a reflection of the divine, and that calmness was a crown no one could steal. When the chamber was ready, the hearth was lit, a soft fire flickered in the corner, casting shadows that danced along the walls. The queen's bed was large but simple, covered in linens scented with orange blossom and thyme. At its foot sat a small lute, ready for the musician who would play her into rest. Music filled the air, soft, deliberate, like a heartbeat slowing, the melody of peace, of surrender, of stillness. Elizabeth would close her eyes and inhale deeply, letting the fragrance of the room fill her chest. Lavender for calm, rose for love, and mint for clarity of mind. Outside her windows, the night lay still. Only the wind moving through the trees of the palace garden. No sound of war, no voice of counsel, only quiet. And yet, even in peace, her thoughts would wander. She had fought so hard to rule alone, to be both king and queen, and sometimes the solitude weighed heavy upon her heart. Some nights, she would ask her maids to stay, not to speak, but simply to sit by the fire, so that their presence might soften the silence. Other nights, she preferred to be utterly alone. She would write by candlelight, letters never sent, words never spoken aloud. Her quill moved slowly, as though carving her heart into parchment. When the ink dried, she would place the paper aside and whisper softly to no one in particular, "God keep my soul and my England safe." Then, the candles were dimmed, the fire burned low, and Elizabeth would finally lie down. Her breathing slowed, her mind drifting between the weight of the crown and the freedom of dreams. She imagined gardens filled with morning dew, the laughter of her youth, and faces long gone, lingering at the edge of memory. But even in sleep, the queen never truly rested. She would often wake before dawn, her mind already alive with plans and worries. For in her heart, she believed that England itself was an extension of her own soul. And if she slept too long, the kingdom might falter. So she rose early, walked the halls of her palace, the scent of last night's lavender still hanging in the air, the musicians gone, the fire cold. She would glance once more at her reflection and whisper softly, "Another day, another crown to bear." For Queen Elizabeth I, sleep was not escape. It was ceremony, a delicate balance between duty and peace, between the weight of power and the stillness of night. And as she drifted through her nights, between waking and dreaming, perhaps she found moments of truth, moments where even a queen could be simply human, breathing, resting, free. In the quiet shadows of Europe's battlefields, beneath the weight of smoke and history, there walked a man who bent nations to his will, Napoleon Bonaparte. He commanded armies, ruled empires, and shaped the world with nothing but strategy and vision. But when night fell and the roar of cannon faded, Napoleon faced the same silence we all do, the silence before sleep. For him, sleep was not indulgence, it was control, it was mastery over the mind itself. He often slept only 3, perhaps 4 hours a night, and yet he would wake sharp, clear, relentless. He used to say, 6 hours for a man, 7 for a woman, 8 for a fool. To Napoleon, sleep was not rest, it was strategy. He believed that those who slept too long lost precious moments of power. He slept when he chose, anywhere, anytime, in tents, in carriages, on the battlefield itself. His aides would tell stories of the emperor drifting into slumber mid-conversation, head resting on his arm, eyes closing for mere minutes. Then, suddenly, awake again, mind blazing with plans and possibilities. He trained his body to obey his will, to fall asleep instantly, and to awaken fully in an instant. Imagine him now, in his campaign tent, the night air cold and damp, the murmur of soldiers fading beyond the hills. Inside, a small desk, maps scattered, ink drying on orders written just moments ago. A candle burns low. Its flame trembles with each breath of wind. Napoleon leans back in his chair, his coat still buttoned, his boots still dusty. He allows his eyes to close, only for a moment. He knows that dawn will bring new battles, new choices, new consequences. His mind drifts, but never far. Even in dreams, he commands. He sees armies moving through fog, flags waving, cannons roaring in the distance. He sees victory and loss, woven together in sleep. Yet, deep within him, there is stillness. The stillness of a man who believes in destiny, who believes that even sleep must serve his purpose. He once told his generals that he could sleep standing if the world required it. And many nights he nearly did. But on rare occasions, when the battles paused, when the stars hung above the camp in perfect silence, Napoleon would allow himself to lie back, his head against the earth, his gaze fixed on the heavens. Perhaps in those quiet moments, the conqueror became a man again. Not an emperor, not a legend, just a weary soul beneath the infinite sky. For even the greatest among us must yield to sleep. Even those who rule the waking world must one day close their eyes and surrender to the stillness within. Imagine him now, in his campaign tent, the night air cold and damp, the murmur of soldiers fading beyond the hills. Inside, a small desk, maps scattered, ink drying on orders written just moments ago. A candle burns low. Its flame trembles with each breath of wind. Napoleon leans back in his chair, his coat still buttoned, his boots still dusty. He allows his eyes to close, only for a moment. He knows that dawn will bring new battles, new choices, new consequences. His mind drifts, but never far. Even in dreams, he commands. He sees armies moving through fog, flags waving, cannons roaring in the distance. He sees victory and loss, woven together in sleep. Yet, deep within him, there is stillness. The stillness of a man who believes in destiny, who believes that even sleep must serve his purpose. He once told his generals that he could sleep standing if the world required it. And many nights he nearly did. But on rare occasions, when the battles paused, when the stars hung above the camp in perfect silence, Napoleon would allow himself to lie back, his head against the earth, his gaze fixed on the heavens. Perhaps in those quiet moments, the conqueror became a man again. Not an emperor, not a legend, just a weary soul beneath the infinite sky. For even the greatest among us must yield to sleep. Even those who rule the waking world must one day close their eyes and surrender to the stillness within. In the glittering heart of Versailles, beneath ceilings painted with gods and angels, lived a man who called himself the Sun King. Louis XIV, a ruler of beauty, control, and ritual. For Louis, every moment of his life was ceremony. From the first light of dawn to the final sigh before sleep, even his rest was a performance, a sacred theater played before the watching eyes of the court. Each evening, the king's chamber transformed into a stage. Courtiers gathered, ministers, nobles, attendants, all invited to witness what was called le coucher du roi, the king's going to bed. It was not merely sleep, it was power made visible. Imagine the scene now. A vast golden room, glowing with candlelight, walls shimmering with mirrors, the scent of perfume and wax heavy in the air. At the center stands the king, dressed in fine silk, his presence radiant, deliberate, slow, every movement measured, every breath. As attendants approach, they remove each layer of his garments, the robe, the lace, the jewels, each gesture precise, respectful, rehearsed. It is said that even the act of unbuttoning his sleeve was a privilege granted only to a chosen few. When the final garment fell away and the king stood in his night clothes, the chamber hushed. The ceremony of power became the ritual of peace. The king would then step toward his bed, a magnificent piece of art, carved with sunbursts and lilies. Curtains of crimson velvet surrounded it, golden tassels catching the candlelight like fire. Two attendants turned down the covers. One fluffed the pillows. Another adjusted the golden candle at the bedside. Everything perfect, balanced, divine. Before lying down, Louis would cross himself slowly and utter a brief prayer of thanks for victory, for health, for the endless grace of the sun. Then he would turn, lie back against the silken pillows, and close his eyes as dozens of courtiers watched in silence. When his breathing slowed, the attendants bowed deeply, backing away one by one until the chamber was empty, save for the sound of flickering flames. Even in slumber, the Sun King ruled, his body still, but his legend awake. The people believed that when he slept, the sun itself rested, and when he awoke, light returned to the kingdom. But beyond the splendor, behind the gold and ritual, there was a man, a soul, sometimes weary, a heart that sought rest. In private moments, when the court had gone, Louis would sometimes wake before dawn. He would sit upright, alone, listening to the echo of silence in his vast chamber. He would think of his youth, of gardens where he once ran freely, before crowns, before councils, before the endless eyes. And for a few quiet minutes, he would feel like himself again. Then, as the first hint of sunlight touched the curtains, he would rise. The ceremony of waking began, and the Sun King returned to his throne. For Louis XIV, sleep was not surrender. It was performance, a ritual of control, beauty, and faith. Even in dreams, he reigned. In the dim corridors of Whitehall Palace, beneath heavy velvet drapes and the scent of old wine and smoke, there lived a king who could never truly rest. Charles II. He was called the Merry Monarch, a man of charm, laughter, and endless celebration. But behind the laughter, behind the court's glittering facade, there was a shadow that followed him into every night. Charles feared the silence of sleep. He feared the moment when the music stopped, when the jokes ended, when the room grew still. Each night, he surrounded himself with people, servants, musicians, jesters, friends. They would talk, laugh, drink, until the candles burned down to their base. And when the last voice fell quiet, he would ask another to speak, another to stay, just to fill the silence. He could not bear to be alone with his thoughts, for in solitude, the ghosts returned. Memories of exile, of loss, of the father he saw executed when he was only a boy. That memory haunted him most of all. The echo of the crowd, the falling blade, the moment his world shattered. So Charles filled his nights with company, hoping the noise would keep the past away, hoping that laughter could drown the ghosts. But when at last exhaustion claimed him, he would lie down upon his grand bed, surrounded by flickering candles and half-empty goblets, and fall into shallow sleep. Servants stood nearby, watching quietly, ready to wake him if he stirred in fear. They said he often spoke in his sleep, murmuring names, pleading softly, as though still seeking forgiveness from the dark. Imagine it now, the great palace, silent, the king turning restlessly beneath silk sheets, his crown set aside, his mind still trapped in the noise of yesterday. For King Charles II, sleep was not peace. It was a fragile truce between memory and the man who wore it. And as the dawn crept through the curtains, he would wake, smile, and once again become the merry monarch. But deep within, a part of him always remained in the night, still listening for the voices that kept his loneliness away. Across centuries, from the golden sands of Egypt to the marble halls of Versailles, from battlefields and empires to candle-lit chambers of lonely kings and queens, we have traveled together through the sleep of history. Each ruler, each monarch, each soul wrapped in silk or stone faced the same truth, that no matter how powerful, how wise, how divine they seemed, they could not escape the gentle pull of sleep. Pharaohs slept in temples to speak with gods. Alexander rested beneath the stars, his sword beside his hand. Elizabeth drifted into dreams of duty and roses. Napoleon found brief peace in the pauses between wars. Louis slept before 1,000 eyes, while Catherine read herself into eternity. And Charles could never quite silence the ghosts of his heart. So many rulers, so many dreams, and yet all the same, all human, all seeking the same quiet surrender that you seek now. Take a slow, deep breath. Inhale through your nose. Exhale gently through your mouth. Again, slowly. Inhale. Exhale. Let your shoulders drop. Let your hands grow still. Feel your body become heavy, grounded, safe. The world outside fades away, just as it did for kings and queens long ago. The battles, the decisions, the crowns, all set aside for the night. Right now, you are no longer ruler or servant, no longer dreamer or watcher. You are simply a soul resting between breaths. In this stillness, you can imagine the gentle flicker of candlelight, the scent of lavender and smoke, the sound of soft wind brushing through ancient halls. Every sound you hear, every breath you take, draws you deeper and deeper into rest. Perhaps now you find yourself walking through a corridor of dreams. The walls shimmer with golden light. Doors open quietly, and behind each one lies the memory of a story you've just heard. The Pharaohs' temple, the warrior's camp, the queen's garden, the emperor's tent. All silent now, all asleep. You walk softly past them, feeling the calm of centuries settle around you. Each step, slower, lighter, until at last you reach your own door. You open it, and there is your bed, simple, peaceful, waiting. You lie down. The sheets are cool, the air gentle, the world completely still. And as you breathe, you feel a warmth begin to rise within you, from your chest to your shoulders, to your arms, to your hands. The warmth moves down your spine, to your legs, to your feet. You are surrounded by peace, by safety, by the silence of the stars. If thoughts come, let them pass. If memories stir, let them drift. They are clouds on the river of your mind, and the river always flows toward rest. Inhale, exhale, slowly, softly, deeply. You are floating now, weightless, timeless. The stories of kings and queens fade like candlelight at dawn. Only stillness remains. And in that stillness, you remember that even the mighty must surrender. Even rulers must rest. Even kings must sleep. So now, it's your turn. Let go of the day. Let go of the noise. Let the night hold you, as it once held them. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Drifting, falling, sleeping. You are safe. You are calm. You are home. Good night. Sleep well and dream like a king.